let's go on to the next call here. This is going to be Ryan. And Ryan, where are you played out of? Where are you playing out of?
This is out of Lucky Chances in the SF Bay
Yep.
Area, Bart.
Yep. I played there before. Lucky Chances. One of the oldest card rooms probably in the whole country, actually. What game are you playing here?
This is 3-5 no limit, 1,500 cap buy-in, 8-handed.
By the way, Ryan, I have you on my list as a 9.5 call, the highest one of the day. And I said I do a self-rating of what I think are the best calls just based upon the hand. I don't remember what the hand is off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
I don't mean to
Well, I'm
put you on a pedestal here, but
yeah, it's a spot I've never been in before, Bart. So
okay.
I'm not going to spoil it or anything, but yeah, it put me in a blender.
3-5, 1,500 cap, and how deep are you guys?
We are 1825 effective. We do have we're playing with an under the gun kill, so it's $10 to come in.
So you mean like a straddle?
3-5 they play with an automatic $10 kill. So there's
Like a rock. So whoever wins the pot has to straddle from any position?
no, it's not a winner's straddle. It's an under the gun kill. So
So,
under the gun puts in $10 automatically. Like it's like a straddle basically.
oh, okay. I've only heard kill like in split pot limit games, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah, they call it a kill.
Okay.
You can technically do it from any position, even the button.
Okay.
In the smaller games, they do that, so they kill from any position. But in this game, it's played under the gun.
All right. So 3-5 plus 10, 1825 effective. Okay.
Correct. So under the gun +1 limps.
Okay.
I'm in middle position with King of Hearts, Queen of Clubs.
So +1 limps, and you've got King of Hearts, Queen of Clubs.
King of Hearts, Queen of Clubs.
King of Hearts, Queen of Clubs from MP. Okay.
And I decided to limp, which isn't standard for me. Usually, I'm raising here to 35 or 40, but for whatever reason, I decided to mix it up and limp.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because I don't think I would over limp with this hand. It brings up a thing though. You know, I've said this before. I don't know whether this is true for you or not. Sometimes in games, but you're saying that the kill or the straddle is on every hand, right?
It's on every hand. So standard opens about 35,
Yeah.
30, 35.
Sometimes in games that only have an occasional straddle where like one guy is straddling like just one like every time, I will find that some players, for whatever reason, because maybe the stakes are all of a sudden double, will limp or over limp some hands that they would otherwise raise in a non-straddled pot. I don't know why that is, but that usually goes out the window because you're playing you're really playing a 3-5-10 game. Yeah, I mean, I would raise here a lot, but okay, so you over limp from MP. Yep.
Button calls. Small blind, who's the main villain, completes to 10. Big blind completes as well, and the under the gun kill checks. So we
Okay.
have 60 going to the flop.
60 going to the flop. 1 limp, 2 limps, 3 limps, and then all the blinds complete, and it looks like you're like 6 ways. Here's MP1 with king queen off. Okay.
Sure. So the flop we get 6 of spades,
Mm-hmm.
9 of spades,
Mm-hmm.
King of clubs.
All right. So you flop top pair.
Correct.
Okay.
Small blind leads for 60, which is pot, which kind of threw me off guard a little bit.
Okay.
Big blind calls. Under the gun folds.
Uh-huh.
Under the gun +1 calls. Hero calls.
Okay. So let's just stop right there. So pot 60. It's limped around. And it comes out king 9-6 with 2 spades here with king queen off, which is a hand that you usually raise. Small blind bets out pot for 60. Big blind calls, straddle folds. The MP1 guy, who's the initial limper, he calls as well. So now you got 2 people to your right that have called. So, and the pot's like 240, right? 60 plus 60 plus 60 plus what was in there. The pot's like, yes, it's 240 and it's 60 for you to call. So you're getting 4-1, and you only have one guy behind you in the form of a button. I mean, yeah, I think that I'm going to continue here because I think you have the best hand enough, at least 1 out of 5 times with position. I hope the button folds out behind you, but I don't know what the deal is couple things going on here in this setup, right? Like, I don't know what the deal is with the small blind. If it was a really good player and the small blind let out here, I might even, or if it's two really good players from up front and it goes bet call, I might even get, it's hard for me to put myself in this spot because I'm not usually over limping king queen off. I might even consider possibly making like a tough fold. The other thing to think about though too is that for whatever reason, sometimes people will over VPIP the small blind in this scenario when they really shouldn't. I mean, the small blind's in for 3. He should have a playable hand, an actual decent hand to complete there for 7, being from out of position. Like, he shouldn't have all that junk that you'll find in, the straddle checking or maybe even in the big blind. But I think unless you have some good reason, I'm going to probably continue with a call and see what's going on here.
Right. And so button does fold behind
All
me.
right, so hero calls.
So I call.
Yep. Button folds.
So we got 300. I have the pot at 300 going to the turn.
Yep, 300, okay.
So the turn is the king of diamonds?
The turn here is the king of diamonds. Some people in the chat saying, did you ever consider, because we did wash over this a little bit, did you ever consider raising the flop? Now remember, it went call, call, call. Small blind leads 60, big blind calls plus 1 calls. My gut reaction was that raising might be an overplay. Did that ever cross your mind?
It did for a sec, but the small blind sizing, it kind of threw me off. Like I thought he was kind of strong. He might be leading, 2 pair plus on this flop, maybe king X of spades, something like that.
Yeah.
So I thought raising would be a bit of an overplay. So I leaned toward the call.
So the pot's 300. Now the turn is the king of diamonds.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you have trips.
So I have trips with the good kicker.
Yeah.
Pretty much discount ace king. Small blind leads for 105.
So small blind continues to lead here, but kind of on the small sizing. He bets 105. And even before you tell me what happens, I want everybody to think about how strong this lead is here from the small blind again, even for 105. The small blind led, I know it's a limp pot for full pot, and he got 1, 2, 3 callers to his left. And people are like, well, the small blind can have like a combo draw, like Jack 10 of spades, Queen Jack of spades, 7, 8 of spades. If you put yourself in the small blind spot and you were to lead that hand instead of check raising, like some sort of big combo draw, when you get 3 callers to your left, don't you think that this is a bad fucking card to bet out again with a draw? When 3 people call to the left, what are the chances when you don't have a king that somebody else does when 3 people call? Just keep that in mind. You know what I'm saying? So small blind bets 105, okay.
So big blind folds. Under the gun plus 1 folds.
Okay, so both guys fold.
Both guys fold.
All right. So we know that they're not going to fold. They're probably not folding kings, right?
Right. So I actually just contemplated raising here, but the small sizing from the small blind, it kind of set off some alarm bells because, like you said, he's leading small into three people.
Right.
And there's a flush draw, straight draw on the flop.
Yeah, and then for the reasons why too, that those other guys folding, which means that they are more skewed to the ones having draws. You don't have a king. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, the pot's going to be $405. It's $100 for you to call with king queen. So I still think that I can call here with possibly actually even some equity to improve. Like even if he's got like 6-6 here, you still have some equity against that hand, right? Like say he's got 6-6 here, you've got 3 outs to a queen and you've got 3 outs to a 9. I mean, I know it's only 6 outs. The other thing maybe that he could have here, look at the distribution of suits. Again, the board is king of clubs, 9 of spades, 6 of spades. The turn is the king of diamonds. You have king of hearts, queen of clubs. Could somebody be betting out here with like king X of spades and think it's maybe played this way, where you actually have him out kicked?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, king 10 of spades, king Jack of spades, all of those are possibilities.
So I assume you called again.
I flat it.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I got here like this is what I would think here as well. The pot is 5-10. Now, other hands that the hero might be ahead of here besides king X of spades that I don't know. It is a limp pot. I will say it is a limp pot. if I'm in the small blind, I'm just saying me, if I'm in the small blind here, again, I probably don't complete like a ton of hands in this spot, but maybe king jack off or something like that. Or I decide not to raise like king 10 suited, something like that. If I was in the small blind, and I will on, in limped pots lead out with top pair on draw heavy boards quite a bit. I think it's fine to do that with a lot of draws out there. And if I was the small blind and I had king jack, for the same reasons that I don't think you have king queen or ace king because you didn't raise pre, I would continue to bet king jack here. So you could be up against a worse king. You could be up against a worse king. Plus you're getting 4-1 on the call on the turn. That's so. I mean, I would definitely call as played too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my questions.
Yeah.
If there was any merit to raising there, but
I mean, would it be like a stop raise? Like you're going to raise and then just check it back?
I mean, he could have nines full too.
Yeah, I mean, if you raise and then he 3-bet, I mean, and also too, like he can't even raise back with like sixes full here. I mean, you might over limp like king 9 or something like that. I feel like you can you don't need to necessarily raise. The reasons to raise in spots like this is to get value from draws. We've kind of established that he doesn't really have a draw all that much. So you don't need to quote unquote find out where you're at or take like to raise here because that stuff can reveal itself on the river. The call in itself is kind of strong. So pot's 5-10. Okay. Yeah.
So the river's a very interesting card. It's the 6 of diamonds.
Oh, yes. Now I remember. Now I remember because I actually even went into, I don't want to ruin it, because I even went into Poker Cruncher with this one a little bit too. And people will know what I'm talking about here in a second. Okay, so river is a 6. So it's king 9, 6, king 6. And now you have a boat, right? Kings full of 6s, but you do still lose to king 9, right? And quad 6s. Okay.
Yep. Right. So, and the flush draw is bricked out, but we established he probably doesn't have a draw.
Right.
So I'm expecting before he does anything, I'm thinking like if he bets here, we're probably chopping.
Right.
We both got a king, and
right.
I'd probably throw in a small raise.
I don't think you should raise. If he bets, I don't think you should raise. Because the reason why you shouldn't raise is because you're never going to get a king to fold, right? So and you're opening yourself up to actually being beaten here. So you can't get called by worse, right?
Right.
And you're not going to get a chop to fold out. And I think it's too optimistic. I mean, once in a while, like you can make a certain play in a certain situation where you can raise and try to get somebody off of a chop. But this guy is the one that can actually have the better hands and you don't. So I don't think you can raise if he bets. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
He ends up checking.
Okay. So small blind checks. Okay. So, I mean, if anybody remembers the hand with, and I just remembered this in my head. I wasn't even thinking about this going in. If anybody remembers that hand between Andy and Jackie from, I don't know if it was from Live at the Bike or if it was from Hustler Casino Live. And I think it was a very, very similar, it might have even been with pocket 6s, actually, where I think it was a queen, though, that Andy had where it was exactly the same situation. It was the biggest pot ever at the time. I think it was on Live at the Bike. I think it was the biggest pot ever. Same type of situation. Andy in position had queens full or whatever top full was. And then the other guy, Jackie, had bottom quads. And Jackie played this as a check and Andy bet and Jackie check raised all in and Andy called. I think it was the biggest pot ever. I might have been commentating that one. I was commentating that one. It was like 4 or 5 years ago, actually. Maybe we can put a link to it. And then afterwards, Andy commented about how he probably should have checked back. That's just something that just popped up in my head. It's weird because you look at this and you're like, well, how could I ever check back here? Like with a full house here? Like how can I ever check back here with a king? And then when you kind of play a little bit of Monday quarterback, there could be a scenario where it actually doesn't make any sense here to bet. With the exception of the fact, one exception, this was the other thing too, if he has nines full and you want him to make some sort of hero call, a disgusting call, then you would want to bet very small to get called by nines full. It was How to Win was saying it was queen 10 off versus 9-9. Yeah, I knew it was something similar. So that's the one little thing. And I think in the Andy versus Jackie hand, I think the nines were middle set, I think it was middle set. And because I remember, and there was a 6 was the bottom card. And I remember people were like, well, Andy could have bet really small to get called by a frustratingly counterfeited boat. And that's what you have here. Betting small to get called by 9-9 would be the only thing. Because you're not going to get, your hand looks so much like a king, right? Remember, we established these are very extreme scenarios. You're never going to get a king to fold. Even if he was doing some crazy thing with a combo draw, there's no way in the fucking world. Your hand looks too much like a king. He knows you have a king, right? So the only thing you're going to get called by here is 9-9, right?
Right.
So if you want to make that thought and you want to make that decision to try to get called by a frustrating 9-9, you could go super small. And maybe he convinces himself that you somehow busted out on a draw, like 150 to 200, something like that.
I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there is merit to actually checking back as well, because the only thing I could get called by
is 9-9.
Is a counterfeited 9-9.
Yeah, is a counterfeited 9-9. Remember, he would have to not raise preflop with that hand, and he'd also have to call on the river. There's another part to this, though, too, which is, and I talk about this I've talked about this before a lot, where there can be certain situations, it's almost like a mental type of situation, where the proper play in a given scenario, we're going to examine this one, might be to bet fold. But I always tell people, and I remember telling somebody that I had like a private lesson with one time, if you are incapable of bet folding in a situation, meaning like you're going to bet and you're just like, I can't fold to a raise, then there are certain situations where you shouldn't bet because you're going to cost you, the equation is changing. You're going to cost yourself way more than you're gaining if you're incapable of bet folding in a certain situation. I don't know if that ever crossed your mind here where you're like, what it's going to happen if I bet and I get jammed on. But I think breaking it down, the only reason to bet here is to get called by a frustrating 9-9. And then you might get into a situation where you level yourself and I'm like, well, I bet 150 and now the guy might jam on me and maybe he's jamming like any king or something like that. What did you do here when it got checked to you?
Before I did anything, I was aware that he might be trapping me with that check. I decided he check raises me here. If I throw out a little value bet and he check raises me here, it to something reasonable like 700-800 possibly.
Yeah,
I would just call it off and assume we're chopping.
Yeah.
So I decided to bet on the smaller side. So I went 220, which is about 40%.
Okay, so you bet 220 and
he ripped it on me. He snap jams for about 1650.
1650 total?
Yeah.
So 1650 total, and this is where I was saying, like, I'm going to go into some pretty high. If anybody ever watches my double board videos, double board PLO bomb pot videos, it can get quite complex in big bet split pot scenarios. This is exactly a big bet split pot scenario. And we'll make some assumptions here, but I will try to guide everybody through this because you're people on the cusp are like, well, just call. So you bet. So on the turn, the pot's $510 and you're betting 220 and the small blind here is jamming for 1650. Now I'm going to make one huge assumption, one like huge live node lock that I think that people can all agree with me. The best case scenario here for the hero is a chop. I think that we can make that assumption. I'm taking out any bluffing frequency here. So when the hero goes 220, the small blind moves all in. The hero, there are two things that can happen if the hero calls. He can chop the pot or he can lose to king 9 and 6-6. So let's take a look at the math of this. When you are thinking about calling to split the pot, you're calling for a chop. What ends up happening is the only thing that the hero can actually win here, you have to look at the previous street pot size. The previous street's pot size is $510, okay? The hero is betting 220 into 510. So once this guy jams, the only thing that the hero can do is win half of 510 from the turn and win his money back from the bet. He basically win the 220. So the hero here is basically calling 1650 minus two. The hero is calling 1430 because it's 1430. He moved all in for 1650. 1430 to win half of 510, which is what, like 255 plus his bet back. So 255 plus 220, it's 475. So the equation is I have to call 1430 to win back 475. So you are laying almost, I would say, 1-3. 1-3. This is totally flipped around. It's not 3-1, it's 1-3. Meaning that you're going to have to chop 75% of the time or more for this to be a profitable call. I did some shortcuts with the math. Another way you can look at this too, and I actually went over this in my double board video this past month, is like, if you don't know those shortcuts for the math, what you can do is you can put all the money in your head. So hero bets 220 into 510. The dude jams for 1650. So that's what, 730 plus 1650 is what, like 2380. And then we put in our call. 2380 plus 1430 is what, 3800 total. And then you chop that. So 3800 is total in the pot. Now you take half of that. So you get back 1900. You're getting back 1900, but you're putting in 1430 to get back 1900. And we get that answer of 475. Putting in 1430 to get back 1900. And that's the 475 right there. So you have to chop 75% of the time here. And my thing off the bat, and I'm not saying that like I'm any type of robot or anything like that, and maybe I make a frustrating call if I had played it this way in this manner, is that I don't think you're going to chop here 75% of the time, I think, as played with this line. And the reason why that is because you have to really look at what is the small blind play this way. You can't say it's just any king because he doesn't have any king. Now he's got hands like quad sixes and he's got king nine. All those hands would play it like that. But even if he has king jack and king 10, how many combos of those hands are there? There's 3 kings that are dead, right? So there's what? 3 combos of king jack, 3 combos of king 10, right? That's like 6 combos. Then there's another 3 combos of king 9, 1 combo of 6-6. You're losing to 4 combos if he did it all the time with king jack, king 10. But I don't think that ever really happens, though, in this spot. Like, he would have to do this with a king. Again, you would have to chop 75% of the time, even if it was like half and half. I mean, king jack and king 10, 6 combos. He's got king 9 and quad 6s 4 times. That's nowhere close to 75%, right? Like, you need to find a ratio where, like, he has that king 9 and 6-6 like 2 times, and he's doing the other thing at least 3 times more, like 6 times, to get to the 75%. If you follow me, caller, I know that can get a little bit complex. So
this is a spot I've never been in before.
Yeah.
So I mean I've made big laydowns before, Bart. This one, it really I mean, I tanked for a good while. I asked him, point blank, if he had quads or a king 9. I thought it was more likely it was king 9. Of course, he didn't say anything. And do you want to know what I did? Or
yeah, sure. Tell us what you did.
Yeah. I ended up folding.
Okay.
Yeah. So I made the fold, and I told him I had a king before, but I didn't show it.
Uh-huh.
And everybody was giving me shit at the table. They're like, Can't believe you folded a king. The villain, he made a couple comments after, so he didn't show, but he made a couple remarks
So you
that
never
I
got to see
did
what he
make a
had?
good I didn't get to see what he had, but his comments afterwards kind of led me to believe he had king nine. So he said he didn't have quads. He said good laydown. I had the nuts, and then so I mean that could just be bullshit. But
Hmm.
um, if he had quads, there was a high hand jackpot going on at the time.
Oh, so he would have showed it.
He would have showed the quads.
Right,
So
right.
it was most likely king nine, and then he says something like he fucked the river sizing up. If he had gone 800, 900, I would have snap called and paid him off.
Wow.
So I mean, who talks like that? It sounds. And then he one other thing, Bart. He mentioned he had this player had been stacked 3 times previously by the same guy, and he made another comment that he wishes that guy had my hand because that guy would have paid him off. So it sounded like I made a good laydown, but I'll
Well,
never know for sure.
like I said, I went through the math of it. So just because I know about split plot math, but definitely an interesting one. But I don't think that you're going to chop 75% of the time. That's the math on that. So I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.